Hello, and welcome back to another enlightening episode of our YouTube channel. I'm your host, Stephanie Michele Sweigart, a licensed and practicing speech and language pathologist. I am in a school-based setting, and I'm here to have speechtherapypd.com. I'm excited to see all of you and have you join a special guest here today, Melissa Burk DeLange, and she is an expert in the field of speech therapy and data collection. So we are super excited to be able to speak with her today. Welcome, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Stephanie.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you're currently involved in, maybe what your role is.
Yeah. So I spent my first 9 years full-time in elementary schools. And then the next 5 years, I spent more on a consulting basis, the next 4 or 5 years, where I was really working as a CF supervisor in schools. And then, at that time, I had also started taking on a few private clients. Now, since then, there's a whole history. If you watch any of my webinars, I usually mention this. I have a whole personal history of baby loss, of pregnancy loss. And so I had many miscarriages and was stressed out in schools. And I finally, that's part of why I left schools. But currently, so I have 3 miracle babies after 10 pregnancies. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful experience. So I'm mostly home with them, raising them, but I do run a small private practice out of my home. And I have a few clients just to keep my skills up, to keep in the know. I love to teach about what I know. I love to really delve in and get nitty gritty with stuff. And yeah, my passions are vocal and speech coaching for actors, bilingual issues. And then I love to talk about stress and mindfulness and how to manage life, because life happens at the same time as we're working, right? And so how do we manage those things? Those are my passions.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing such a remarkable journey with us. I had no idea. Thank you for your vulnerability and just sharing that with everybody who is listening. And it sounds like you're wearing many hats, the mom hat and the speech therapist hat and the coach and mentor leader hats. And thank you for all that you're doing in the field of speech pathology. And we are so grateful to have you here. And aside from all those hats, I know you also wear another hat because you are an author, a content creator for a course. Yep, on speechtherapypd.com that we're going to talk about today. And that is called Cultural Considerations in Assessment and Data Collection of Monolingual and Bilingual Children. And we're highlighting this today because we think it's really important, especially for our listeners that are a lot of speech clinicians. Data collection can often present, as you know, a lot of challenges, right, for clinicians. And this is due to a wide variety of factors that can be in our control, sometimes out of our control. It could have to do with, our setting or our caseload or workload situations, diverse populations. I think we're going to touch on that, available resources, even sometimes maybe the expectations we have when we go into the setting. So I think that our listeners are excited to really gain practical strategies and access to some tips maybe that will help streamline the process of therapy data collection. And you are our person for that. So without further delay, I wanted to dig into the golden question that we have for you today. And that really is, what would be, Melissa, 3 strategies that we can use to streamline the process of therapy data collection for monolingual and bilingual children?
All right. So my 3 strategies, let's go. Let's just jump right into them, right?
Yes.
The first one would be plan it. Okay. We must plan our data collection, and it doesn't matter if they're monolingual or bilingual, but if we don't go in with a good plan, we know this, right? It's the whole thing of our field, right? It's a huge part of our field. If we don't go in with a good plan, then we're not going to have really steady, it's going to be chaotic, frustrating, and results won't be as good, right? So we need to take time to plan it. So let me give you a little micros on the planning here. Okay, a little couple micro steps on the planning.
I love micros.
So first thing I like to do is, if I'm the one who did the evaluation, I know in some cases you're not going to be the person who did the evaluation, but if you're the person who did the evaluation, when I'm finishing my evaluation and I've really seen the good picture of this child, I've got it in my mind, and now I'm ready to write goal recommendations and or the IEP, right? The goals. Then that is when I'm thinking about, okay, what do they need and how am I going to track it? because that's actually going to be part of how I write the goal, right? It's going to go right into it for me and how I track it. If it's, we know that we don't always have to do a percentage goal, or we don't always have to do 3 out of 5 trials, but we do need to have it measurable, right? So
Right.
when you're writing those goals, I like to think about how I'm going to be tracking it, because again, like I said, that can kind of go into some of the text of what I'm going to say in the actual goal.
Okay.
The next thing I like to think about is do I have a favorite way of taking data? Because if I have a favorite way, or something that's easy for me, something that I've got a go-to data sheet, or I've got like just a system that works for me, then if it makes sense, obviously, let me be very clear here. We're not thinking only about ourselves. We must also, of course, like the number one thing is what is best for the child, what is best for the student, right? But if we can make both work, why not? If we can have our cake and eat it too, why not? So especially because it makes you more efficient, right? If you're enjoying what you do, if you have a system that works, systems make things quicker, make things more efficient. So if you have a system that you like, build your goals into the system, like make them work with that system, right? If it makes sense for the child. Again, always what makes sense for the child first. So for example, I have a particular data sheet that I love. That's my go-to data sheet that I've been using for years, and I'm still old school and I still write it, but then I transfer information into digital systems. So, and it's just,
I'm the same way, by the way. I need my little hard
I just need
paper
because
there.
it's quicker. I can't go and type everything in the right fields or whatever during a session, for me anyway. I know maybe some of the newer generations out there can.
Right. I'm not the newer generation.
Me neither. So, but I've got like a grid in the middle of each, section. I've got a little grid of 20 squares, right? And so I can easily tick mark stuff into there, and I can do 2 or more, or I can use more of them because it's all in the data sheet. And I show an example of this, by the way, on my webinar that we're going to reference, but so there's a picture of it if you go and watch that webinar. But anyway, that gives me a quick, easy way to give me round numbers that I can do quick percentages with, right? And it gives me a field that has the activity, and it gives me a field for anecdotal notes and everything. And it's just a comprehensive system that I love. But that doesn't work for every child. In fact, I have a client right now that he has autism. So he's a young child, and he comes from a multilingual home. Okay, 3 languages in the home: English, Tagalog, which is Filipino, and Korean. All right, so he's coming from this interesting setting, and he's a Gestalt language processor. So we're in this. So for me, we're not about percentages at all here. We're not going to be dealing with percentages. What we're looking at is like building up that base of language. Right now, he's in stage 1. So what my data for him, I created a new thing. I created a simple spreadsheet where it's a communication inventory. So we're looking at increasing his number of gestalts, right? So that he can get enough of a baseline to move into that second phase of a natural language acquisition, right? And start mixing and matching his gestalts, which, by the way, just plug for that. If you haven't been looking at that, look at it, because it's so interesting. But anyway.
So I love this. Let me just make sure I'm understanding this right. So we've got plan, always go in with a plan. Then we've got the system, but it doesn't have to be a one size fits all system. Oh. So you can have a different system for different needs as the kids have the needs, and then use that system for that kid time and time again. And you can use that system to also help when you're writing your goals for that kiddo. So that way, like, hey, this is how I want to measure it or not measure it, how I'm going to collect it. And therefore I will write it this way, this goal this way, so that they align. Right. Okay, great.
And you don't have to be too specific in the goal. Like, you can write your goals generally so that if it's passed on to somebody else, they can do it too, But yes, if I have it, it's basically that mental plan and visualization. Like, I'm a big visual person. If I can see myself doing it, then it's like, I can do this, right? If I can't, if it feels confusing and I can't see myself doing it, I don't have that, how this is going to work, then therapy becomes stressful and frustrating, right?
Yeah. Then don't do it, right?
No. And then you also start to feel like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? When you do, you know what you're doing. So
self-doubt, it creeps in.
It creeps in. So anyway, I have a whole communication inventory for him. And then this is, okay, so that's plan, right? Now, if you haven't written the evaluation yourself.
Okay. Oh, this is all under plan. Okay.
This is all
so
under
the system
plan.
still falls under plan. Got it.
Yeah, it's part of the plan. Yeah. Hope that's okay.
Yes. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're teaching us.
Yeah. If you, and okay, so before I go into if you haven't done it, then I like to make sure that at the end of that evaluation and when I'm writing those IEP goals, I have this like checklist of things that I do at the end to make sure I've done everything thoroughly. And one of those is make sure I created the data sheet for that child, right? And so make sure it's done. Like I like to have it finished and done and ready so that when I walk into that first therapy session, I have my sheets ready to go, ready to write on, right? Yes. So that's all part of the plan. That's part of the evaluation / IEP process. If you did not write it and you're just inheriting this child, then you need to go through the same process. You just need to read through what the previous person did, make sure you understand what we're going for here. And if you're just accepting, right, what the previous SLP did, then you're going to make sure you build your data sheets according to what was there, right?
Perfect. Yes.
So that's the plan. Number one plan. Number two, ready? Okay. Number two is only collect the most relevant data. Now, this one is a big one for me. And this comes from, this is from a study, Allswang and Bang. Okay, 1994. So it's a while ago, but I thought that this was an excellent paper study that I read and is incorporated into that webinar as well. So there's more details in that other webinar. But I'm an over data collector. Is anybody else out there like overdoing it or sometimes we underdo it, right? But I would get so stressed out in schools, litigious places or whatever. You've got to have all your notes and what if right? And it was so stressful that I began to like overdo it. And when I read the study, I realized you're right. We only need to collect what's relevant. We need to think about what's feasible, right? We don't have to collect every little thing they say, right? Now, and let me just put an example there. So for this child, for example, that I've been seeing right now, at first he was saying almost nothing that we understood. So I wrote down everything he said, right? And it was in the communication inventory. Now his language has really blossomed. So now he says a lot in a session and I would just be writing the whole time, right? So it doesn't make sense for me to do that. What I'm looking for now is the salient things that I'm seeing that is showing progress, right? So, right? So, for example, he came to my door yesterday and when I opened the door, he looked at me and he said, hello. And that was the first time he said that. And I was like, unprompted, right? It was just, he greeted me. So I write that down, right? Then he said several other things in the session, some things he had said before, some things he didn't. Then at another moment, we play with a train table. He loves trains. He took it off the track like this. And he said, I have it written down. He said, whoosh, get me out. Whoosh, get me out. And he kept saying it. And we knew it was from Thomas the Train. And there was a gestalt, right? But he was waiting for us to help him get out. We helped him get out and he kept playing. And then later on, he did it again. So it's that to me is a salient piece of, okay, that's very clear language. It's very intentional. It's very interactive. And then at the end, when he was leaving the session, my little 2-year-old daughter had been playing with this decoration that we have.
Cupcake.
And he said, as he was leaving, he looked at it and he said, cupcake. Neither I nor his mother knew that he knew that word. So that's a salient piece of information, right? I know I'm getting goosebumps, right? It's just so exciting. So those pieces.
And you probably got little tears in your eyes because that's how I get emotional.
Totally. It's like, yes, so he labeled something. And so that goes in my communication inventory, right? So those can be the salient pieces.
Love that.
Okay, so collect only the most relevant data. And I could talk a little bit more about that, but should we move on to number 3? Or
sure. Yes.
Okay, let's move to number 3. So number 3 is especially, well, this is for everybody, but especially with our multilingual and multicultural families, right? We need to involve the family in data collection, right? Because Okay. And this is for everybody, but especially for them, because a lot of times for them, we're not going to have as, we don't have as much normed data, right, on bilingual children. There's so much more variation in what's happening there. So if we can get information from the family and what's happening at home, then we're going to get a much bigger picture, right? And this goes for anything, right? With all data collection, it's ideally we're collecting data from multiple places and not just in our speech sessions, but feasibility, like we might
settings, people.
Right, exactly. Vary the setting, vary the context, vary the communication partners, the time, all of that. But for example, what I'd like to tell all of my families, all my clients, is if there's anything you see that's like exciting or new, or that surprises you, or that you have a question about, don't hesitate to text me. And I actually do, I give them my number and I let them text me, because that for me is a data collection tool that I use. And it goes in my information. It goes in my, for him in particular, she's telling me what he said at this or that. And we're working on activities of daily living too, and him being able to communicate some of those things. So I'm not going to see any of that. I'm not taking him to the potty. I'm not, right. So those are the things that she's going to say, oh, he did this, or, oh, at dinner time, he did this, or when we were watching, and it's very fun to see those, because you can start to see that's showing progress. Things that haven't happened before. So
I love that too, because sometimes children or our clients will show different skills in different settings. What they do at school, they might not do at home. And what they do at home, they might not do at school. So it's great to get that input. Yeah.
So those are my 3: plan it, collect relevant data, and involve the family.
Love that. Love that. Plan it, collect relevant data, and involve the family. All right. These are amazing. These are super exciting. Now, these are also going to be expanded upon in your course. We're going to talk about where people can find that in a moment. But you kind of mentioned to me, or to all of us, that you're involved in mindfulness. And I just wanted to kind of tie in mindfulness and compassion just a bit to data collection before we end today. And this might resonate a little bit with you, but I just want to kind of tell everybody who's listening, when we are practicing or taking data collection, we do recognize that there are challenges in that. We have a very demanding profession in the field of speech pathology, but we can remember to be very kind and understanding towards ourselves when we're faced with these obstacles that no doubt will come up as you're sort of navigating your plan, navigating your system. So be patient with yourself in this learning process. Also remember sort of what Melissa talked about when we're looking at what data we want to collect and what we want to write down. We can also kind of bring in the art of mindful observation. So really paying attention to maybe some nuances or intricacies of each little interaction that you're having, because what we can do is we can foster deeper connections with our clients, especially our clients who have unique cultural backgrounds or communication styles. So we do want to pay attention to those, and we can note take some of those as well. And when we're being fully present in this way, then we are gathering more accurate and meaningful data as well. And our interventions are also going to be culturally responsive, which we know we want to think about. I also want to just remind you that, when we're thinking about data, try not to be so focused on the data too. Remember that behind every little data point or little check or ticks that we're talking about, there is a human being with unique experiences and emotions. And we want to prioritize that strong relationship and connection as coming first with our clients, because we want to build trust and we want to build empathy and respect. So remember, aside from the data, the human being that is behind the information that you are collecting. And remember, you can continually seek ongoing professional development. So you can embrace this mindset of continually learning and growing in cultural competence, because we talked about monolingual and bilingual students today. So you can actively seek out professional development opportunities, much like the one we're talking about today, where you can expand on your expertise, your knowledge, and your understanding of diverse cultures and languages, and different communication patterns. And when you stay open to this, you're going to enhance the quality of effectiveness of your data collection practices. We're super excited to have you here today. Thank you again, Melissa, for your expertise, for your golden nuggets, your unique perspective that you bring to the field of speech pathology. We are so grateful to have you in our library on speechtherapypd.com. But share with us, if you will, before we go, if people want to find out more about you, where could they go? What resources do you have, or where could they find you?
Awesome. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I've got my handle for, I have two. Okay. So I have a speech page, and then I've got a personal page, but that's where I talk more about my fertility and motherhood and all of that stuff with my 3 miracle children. But anyway, so that's Melissa Burk, sorry, Mel B. Del, Mel B. Del, MELBDEL is my personal one. And then Melissa Burk DeLange is my speech one. Now, just be aware that I'm not as active these days as I would be, but I'm very responsive to my messages, and I love it when people reach out and have questions or connect. So, and then that's the same on Facebook. So Melissa Burk DeLange, you can find me on.
Okay, great. And we're going to put in the notes below, and also where you're watching, we will have all of those sites where people can just click and go and head right towards your information. So thank you for being available, and thank you for sharing that and being a resource for everybody. And for everybody that's listening, if you want to take a deeper dive into this topic, be sure to head over to speechtherapypd.com. Check out this course, Cultural Considerations in the Assessment and Data Collection of Monolingual and Bilingual Children. And again, it's with presenter Melissa Burk DeLange. For other topics, when you subscribe to speechtherapypd.com, you're going to get 1-year access to over 900 live and on-demand courses, and you're going to scoop up those ASHA CEUs. If you're new to speechtherapypd.com, no problem. They got you covered. You can access a free course. So be sure to check out that information also below. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. We do want to hear from you. There is a comment section below where you can leave a comment or you can ask a question. We will see you back here again next week as we are answering more of those golden questions that SLPs and SLPAs are asking. And we are bringing in industry-leading experts like Melissa to give you the answers you need to build your know-how and step up your game. Happy summer, everybody. We'll see you back here next week.